At Beyond Four Walls, we believe everyone deserves to feel safe, especially when working alone. That's why we support the Holly Gazard Trust and their personal safety app, Holly Guard Extra. With a simple shake or tap, the app raises an alert, instantly sharing your location and recording audio and video, capturing vital evidence. The alert is sent to a police-approved contact centre, where trained professionals take action on your behalf and send support directly to your location. Stay safe, stay protected. Visit hollyguard.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Future Group, delivering smarter, safer and more sustainable solutions for the built environment. From fire safety to lighting and electrical, cutting-edge EV charging, advanced security systems, regeneration works and full-scale decarbonisation, we've got your property needs covered. Trusted by property managers across the UK. Visit future-group.uk. Future Group, leading today for a better tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of Beyond Four Walls, where we delve into the world of leadership, resilience and purposeful living. My guest today is Deborah Bulcock, an executive coach and consultant whose journey from the high-pressure corridors of the banking sector to the forefront of leadership development is both inspiring and instructive. With over 2 decades of director experience in banking, Deborah witnessed firsthand the challenges of sustaining performance without compromising well-being. And this experience propelled her to establish her own coaching and consulting practice, dedicated to helping individuals thrive and organisations excel. And Deborah offers a suite of services, including one-on-one executive coaching, team development and strategic advisory, all designed to create leadership with purpose, life with joy and legacy with meaning. She's also the author of Have It All Without Burning Out and Confidence Confessions, books that resonate deeply in today's fast-paced professional landscape. And in this conversation, we'll explore Deborah's insights on sustainable success, the importance of aligning personal values with professional goals, and practical strategies to lead with authenticity and impact. Welcome, Deborah. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Jodie. Thank you.
No problem at all. So can you tell me a bit about your career journey from corporate life to running your business as it stands now?
I can. It's quite a story in and of itself, but I'll give you the nutshell version and we can delve in wherever.
Okay.
My first career, as I refer to it now, was in the banking sector. So I went there straight from university. I have absolutely not a clue why I applied to all of the banks, but I did. And found myself on quite an accelerated path in the early years of joining, so kind of in my early 20s. I was obviously doing well. I was loving life, in those types of organisations, and I was getting promoted. And I found myself at a very senior level, quite young, really, and didn't think anything of it at the time. I think differently now with the benefit of obviously a lot of hindsight. But I did that, and then I found myself operating at director level in the banking sector across multiple organisations. I did move around for quite a number of years. I always worked in the space of either leading large-scale operations, so in terms that people will get, customer contact centres, so the places where you would have called in for queries, so high volume work, lots of people, or I was leading large-scale change into those areas. And it's interesting when I look back now, because I think the thread that's gone throughout my entire career has always been about people and change, but just in different settings. So I did that for more than 20 years, a really good chunk of time. And I've got lots of happy memories and also lots of battle scars from that period, and I'm sure we'll talk about them. So it was actually in 2012. And for now, I'll just say I had a really significant health event. I feel like I was spit out of the workforce quite unceremoniously. So at the time it was a really tricky period for me. And I had to think about what on earth am I going to do next? And I did really want to turn my back on corporate life. And I'd always been interested in well-being, and I decided to train as a nutritional therapist. So really different. People couldn't get their heads around the pivot and what I was doing. But it takes 3 years to train as a nutritional therapist. It's not a weekend course. It's a lot of work and
Right.
clinical time. So I was doing that at weekends. And so I still consulted. So I stayed in the banking sector. You've still got your mortgage to pay, haven't you? So I was
Of
still
course.
consulting and I was training in something new. But as a result of having a bit of a new purpose, life just felt different anyway. So 3 years later, I set up my nutritional therapy practice. And what I tended to find through that was that what was actually getting results for my client wasn't necessarily, obviously, the nutritional well-being health practitioner knowledge was a great asset, but it was my coaching that got people to make the changes that helped them move forward.
Right.
And it kind of started to bring me full circle. So in about, I think it was 2018, 2019, I thought, "Do you know what, I really need to embrace the coaching element more." That's where things were just naturally evolving and taking me. I was getting the corporate clients coming in. So I just moved towards that and I did some more formal qualifications, but in the coaching space. And my coaching business was born
Mhm.
just pre-pandemic. So interesting times. But my coaching practice has taken various guises. I think as with anyone's business, they'll know that it evolves. You start somewhere, you respond to what's going on in the market, you respond to a pandemic, you offer services that are going to help people. But that's where my coaching business was born from. And I do believe that every part of my career contributes to what I'm doing now.
And were you still consulting with the banks at the same time as building this? You mentioned you did at the beginning, but at what point did that have a cut off?
So I think I did my last consultancy gig with, wearing my banking
Mm.
professional hat in 2019.
Okay.
So I've kind of had a good, 5 or 6 years now of it just being my coaching practice.
Mm.
But interestingly, the people that I coach, a lot of them are in the sector that I used to work in.
Right.
Obviously, it's where my network is, it's the environment that I know,
Yeah.
people know that I get it. I get what it's
Yeah.
like to work there. I feel like I'm still really connected to all different parts of my history through the work that I'm doing, but
Mm.
in a way, on my terms and in a way that I really love it.
Well, that's great, but because
Mm.
was there, you mentioned a health crisis there, and I've been through my share of
Yeah.
those, unfortunately. But was there a pivotal moment that made you decide to leave completely, or was it the health side, or was it just, this just isn't for me anymore, and I'm going to move on?
The health event, so, to be open about it, I had an experience with burnout, but I and no one else knew it was burnout at the time. So I kind of had what I refer to as a bit of as a crash, like a burnout crash. In 2012, it's very vivid to me in my memory. And I've never really been off work. I was off work for quite a period of time unwell, like I physically couldn't get out of bed for some time. No one could work out what was wrong with me. And at the time, I kind of just knew that whilst I worked with some brilliant people at the time, ultimately I was just a number. And the fact that I wasn't at work and therefore not contributing and performing, I could tell the conversations were turning to, are you coming back to work or are you leaving? And I think that combined, so on the back of years of stress and giving and overgiving, and that realization that actually it's about the organization as a collective rather than specific individuals, if you will. It was time for me to try something different. And I worked with a coach at that point in time as
Okay.
well. And that particular coach I'm still in touch with. I tell her she absolutely helped me change my life really significantly. And I can remember the coaching session in which I said, I cannot do that for any more of my life.
Mhm.
Life might as well just be over in a way. It was not enjoyable. I didn't want to go back to what I was doing and how I was
Mm.
living my life. and taking a lot of personal responsibility for that, that I think I'm going to have to change the setting in which I work in order for me to change how I work. So I knew I needed a really significant transformation, and that's what I created. So
Mm.
unfortunately, it was a rock bottom situation that made me change what I was doing
Mm.
and how I did it. And I do believe that if I didn't hit that rock bottom, I would have probably limped on.
Yeah.
Who knows for how long. It's one of those really cheesy statements, isn't it? But I am grateful now that that happened because it's got me to where I am now.
Those rock bottom situations that we find ourselves in at times, they're you can't believe that you've got through them sometimes, can you? You sort of
Mm.
look back and you think, how on earth did I get up every day? I suppose for me, and obviously share your story, but for me it was I was obviously able to function in some capacity because I
Mhm.
had a little girl and all of that kind of stuff. But and obviously I was making some positive steps each day. Otherwise, I wouldn't be where I am
Yeah.
now, if you see what I mean. But when you're in it and when you're in those moments of deep, deep sadness, sometimes
Mhm.
it's really hard to see that you're making any improvement at all.
And also sometimes when you're in it, you also don't realize how bad it is.
Yeah.
It's just your normal, it's your everyday. And it's not until you've gone beyond it and you think, crikey, how did how did I work through that? How did I get through that? And I think those are really important reflections for anyone who's been through whatever form of tough period and come out of the other side. It can be easy just to want to close the door on it.
Yeah.
It can be too painful for people. But when the right amount of time has passed, to say, what was it that helped me get through? Because that's where your resilience is grounded.
Well, thank you for sharing that. When you did officially leave the banking sector, and in some ways, I guess with the consultancy, having that lifeline in a way, as much as it was, bringing you down in some respects, it was
Mhm.
also, as you said earlier, paying the mortgage
Yeah,
or
yeah.
helping to pay the mortgage at
Mhm.
least. Did you have any fears or doubts that you had to overcome when stepping away, or was it just, did you know what, I'm all in now. This is what I want. This is what I want to achieve. How did you feel around all of that?
Do you know, I think it was all of those things. So I had
Mhm.
a lot of fears. And I would say that my fears were largely practical ones, that I'd predicted and I'd thought about and
Yeah.
I'd talked about with whether it was my coach or friends and family. And so it was around, income and practicalities and, am I going to set up a new business and how do you set up this kind of business? I've never done that before. And you make some sweeping assumptions that now I look back on and smile. And think, goodness, that was a little bit naive, but you don't know any different at the time. But I
Mm.
think, interestingly, Jodie, that the biggest shock and fear to me when I eventually did it was the loss of identity. And
Yeah.
I did not predict that. I hadn't even thought about that. I would just thought I'm on a new path and I was very optimistic and hopeful and I had a lot of
Mm.
energy for it. But what I found is that because people always ask you what you do when you meet people,
Yeah.
and I found myself constantly referring to, well, I was a director in banking and now I'm doing this. I couldn't let go of the label. Found it
Yeah.
really interesting. So yeah, that loss of identity. And I think the other thing that came up was that like a sense of loneliness as well. So I'd gone from being in organizations where you're always surrounded by a team, there's always someone to bounce an idea off. You're in it together, you've got resources, all of those things which you don't
Mhm.
actually appreciate at the time for what they are, to, all right, I'm now a solo business owner who has no experience in doing this.
Yeah.
If I want support or help from someone who knows what they're doing, I have to pay for it, but I'm not earning the money
Hmm.
in to do that. Just those difficult things. And it's also interesting how quickly people disappear from your life as well. So some of the people that you think will be your biggest advocates and supporters for you in a new venture end up not being.
Mhm.
And that's quite interesting. And then others pop out of the woodwork and are absolutely behind you all of the way. And
Yeah.
that was, just interesting. So I think, so you ask about fears beforehand, I'd say they were all practical, but the reality was the practical things were quite easy to work through. You just kind of, it's just problem solving. Some of the tougher things were the unexpected, more emotive, particularly in the early stages of starting on a new path.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually what you
Mm.
say about identity because, for the past nearly 9 years, I've founded, run, CEO,
Mhm.
everything
Yeah.
of my business. And as things are starting to change for me, it feels strange to not be that person anymore. And I, in some ways, feel like, well, who am I now? And
Mm.
randomly, I went to a conference the other day. We've all got name tags and everything, and normally I would have had the company name underneath my name, but
Yes.
I just, when I registered, I just put my name down, and I didn't really think much of it because that's just me. But then when people look
Mhm.
at, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a nobody, and it just came out of my mouth like that. But obviously, I'm not, and but it is a strange thing. I'm struggling a bit with the whole identity thing at the moment.
Yeah, that's really
Strange
interesting.
one.
Yeah, and
But
one
going
that
back to,
people tend not to expect. Mm.
yeah, but we all work through it, and I shall find my new identity. Well, podcaster obviously is what what I
Yeah,
am
yeah,
right now.
absolutely.
So your books, you've written two. Have It All Without Burning Out is how I was kind of introduced to you in a way. Both of your books are incredible, but talk to me about the first one if you don't mind. So Have It All Without Burning Out. What inspired you to write that? Was it about your burnout story?
It was definitely linked to my burnout story. So, Have It All Without Burning Out was a 2019 project. I was in that point of making the transition to I am starting a coaching business. And what I was finding, I'd started becoming quite open about my burnout story. So early on, when it's very raw, my nearest and dearest knew about it as I was finding out more. And interestingly, my training as a nutritional therapist is what really helped me understand what had happened to me. So it was kind of quite fascinating. So through the culmination of that learning, that experience, and also getting a bit of distance from what had happened, and where I was then. And I was also attracting a lot of clients to me who had experienced burnout or were suspecting burnout. And I just thought, do you know what? Nothing's changed. In the years since I experienced this, I don't think anything, apart from there's a little bit more awareness, there's more use of the term, probably misuse of the term.
Yeah, I was about to say, do you think it's become a
Yeah.
bit of a buzzword
Yeah,
now?
yeah. But from a health perspective, it's really difficult for people to get any support. There's significant taboo, associated with the word. People tended to be quite feel ashamed and embarrassed, as I did. A lot of people just use language like it's a symbol of I can't cope or I can't deal with stress or I'm not capable. And it's none of those things. Um, so the inspiration came from how can I share my story? How can I help other people? Yeah, how can I make a difference in this small part of the world? Because this is affecting lots and lots of people, and we somehow need to normalize talking about it. And we also need to talk about both personal responsibility and organizational responsibility associated with burnout prevention and helping people with that. So I guess it had real purpose, excuse me, it had real purpose behind it. My whole raison d'etre is about how can I help people, really, really thrive, enjoy their work, be their absolute best. And that was a part of my way of doing it.
Well, it's a great book.
Thank
I've
you.
I've recommended it to many. Yeah, it's a really good book, as is Confidence Confessions as well. They're really great, and you should be really proud of them.
Yeah,
Um,
and I am actually. I am proud of them. And I do think everyone's got a book in them. I really believe that. And I think everyone's story has impact, even if it's just to a few people. You know, it can make a difference when someone, you know, I have lots of people who message me and they'll say, I've just read your story. I've just read the first part of Have It All Without Burning Out. And I've just been nodding the whole way through. You know, people just say thank you. Like you've just normalized that for me.
Yeah.
And if I can do that for people and they can move forward from it, then I'm happy.
That's brilliant, isn't it? As you say, if you can just, even if it's just one person, or you can change the life of that one person, or you can stop them from reaching burnout because they've recognized it in themselves early enough that they're not going to hit that low point or rock bottom, as we spoke about earlier. You know, it's definitely something to keep going with. But
Yeah, absolutely.
so why do you think high performers are particularly vulnerable to burnout?
Well, it's a really interesting one, you know. And over time, I've probably changed my language a little bit, that I'm seeing a difference between, this is very subtle, but between high performance and overachievers.
Okay.
So if we talk about overachievers, so those people who you will always notice as going the extra mile, they'll never miss anything. If you want a job doing, they're the people to get it done. You know, people will use language like, I don't know how they do it all, but they get it done. You know, they might describe them as a Superman, Superwoman, what have you. And what I've found really through my coaching work, as well as kind of some self-reflection, is what I'm seeing in people is those people who are the absolute driving force behind things. When they're in the overachieving category, there's typically some other things going on. So they might actually not have the confidence that people think they do. And there's some, you know, so they are overworking to compensate for that.
Right.
They might have some people pleasing tendencies. They might find it difficult to say no and put really firm boundaries in place. They might have some perfectionism traits. You know, so what I see is quite a number of underlying reasons that might drive someone to be an overachiever. And therefore, you can see the natural follow on that those are the people who will always go that extra mile, don't really have an off button, you know, are getting, I guess, the core of their validation and self-worth from delivering for others. And with that, so for an organization, like they want those people, you know,
Yeah.
you know, they want those people who are willing to go the extra mile and they will work weekends if they need to get a project over the line and so on. And I don't even mean that in a toxic way. You just want those people in your team because they work hard and they get things done. But ultimately, if we don't know the reasons why they're working in that way, I believe they then become susceptible to burnout for the obvious reasons of they're
Yeah.
pushing themselves too hard, they're never really switching off. You know, they're always on the go and then they're on to the next thing. And they'll typically be like that in their personal life as well as at work.
Hmm.
You know, so they might also be the person who runs the household, you know, manages the family, is the person who organises all of the social events to bring everyone together, so on and so forth. You can kind of see those traits. So I tend to put that more, you know, in the overachieving category. And I myself try to think now of high performance as people who have got more balance. So if
Okay.
someone's truly high performing, you know, they are getting the job done, but they are also managing their boundaries and they're prioritizing well and they're understanding what's possible. You know, they're negotiating where they need to do. And that's what I'm working with my clients with quite a lot.
Okay.
You know, burnout might not even be mentioned, but I will always have in my mind, is this person at risk of
Okay.
potentially heading down an ill health route because of how they're working and what's driving that and how can I
Okay.
help them?
The overachiever category. I think
Mm.
I think you just, it feels like you just saw deep into my soul. Um, and you know, and I think a lot of that comes from my childhood, actually, from when
Mhm.
I was really badly bullied as a child. You know, if I went above and beyond, like the people pleasing and, you know, didn't want to say no and all of that kind of stuff. If I did everything perfectly, nobody would say anything to me, or nobody would pick on me, or, and I've carried that into adulthood. And I'm pleased to say that I think I'm coming out of that a little bit now, but it has taken me 40 years to do it. So it's definitely a tricky one, especially if you're passionate about what you do as well, and you're passionate about your career, and you want to succeed, and you want to have the good job and the good title and the good salary and all that kind of stuff. You know, that balance is so difficult, isn't it?
And also, I think if you're in a business which is about supporting people in some way, shape, or form, and the way you've always looked at your business is absolutely that. It's not about bricks and mortar, is it? It's about the people that are within it. You know, similarly with me, I am in, you know, a caring service business. So if someone's in need in front of you, it can be hard to put those boundaries in place. But it is crucial that you do.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've done a lot of work to come a long way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not perfect. Absolutely not. I still get heart palpitations if I have to say no to somebody, because I want to help them, unless it's, you know, something terrible. I'm not going to say no. But yeah, I do find it really hard to disappoint people, I guess, rather than the saying no side of it. I don't want people to be disappointed in me or the business, or just if somebody's reached out for help and I can't help them, I will feel terrible for that for God knows how long.
I understand that.
Yeah. So are there any early warning signs people should look out for when it comes to burnout?
I do think it's quite individual, but there are definitely some things. So the obvious one is persistent fatigue. So if people are constantly tired and cannot get relief from rest, sleep, breaks, and what have you, that starts to tell you that your system's gone a bit further than a healthy tiredness. So that's obviously the main one for people to be thinking about. But when we've had a stress response happening in our body, like an over stress response for a really long time, it starts to knock lots of our systems out of balance. So for some people, that could lead to gastrointestinal issues. So somebody might say, I never used to have IBS and now I've been diagnosed with IBS. Now that could be related to long-term stress. It could be completely unrelated, and it could be with something else. This is the tricky thing. You know, for me, some of my experience that I know now was about hormone shifts that happened as a result, as well as it affected my musculoskeletal system. So I started developing muscle and joint pain, and also developed a really significant vitamin D deficiency at the same time. So the answer isn't a straightforward one, I guess is what I'm saying. So persistent fatigue is the common thing. But if you have got other symptoms that are arising that are unexplained, that are emerging at a similar time, what you need is a practitioner who will look at you as a whole.
Right.
You know, so, you know, doctors, GPs are amazing in so many ways, but the way they will look at you is that symptom equals that. Whereas when you see a natural health practitioner, for example, you know, they've got an hour with you compared to 6 minutes that a GP's, you know, limited to. They will look at the whole of you and how all your systems interact to then try and get back to root cause. And that's what becomes really important.
Okay. That's really interesting. Fatigue was definitely one for me. I was always tired, always. And I couldn't even explain how tired I was, because it's just something like I've just never felt before. And I mean, I've got an underactive thyroid, so, you know, tiredness can hit me quite a lot anyway. But it was just, I just couldn't seem to shake that exhausted feeling, and then things obviously just got worse and worse and worse. But how do you help leaders then in the role that you do now? How are you helping leaders reconnect with their values, I guess, and what it is that they want to achieve in order to protect their health and keep their career going? Because ultimately that's what we want to still be able to do. We still want that career. We still have our wants and dreams. We just want our health to be there along the way as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and obviously it depends what a client has come to me for specifically. So most people come to me to do with kind of career progression in some way, shape, or form. So these are senior people already. They're operating at a high level in fast pace, big pressure environments. And they're either thinking about their next career move for for whatever reason, could be a whole host of reasons for that. Or they've just had a big promotion and they're like, actually, I'm in a new role and I want someone by my side whilst I, get to a place of performing in this elevated role. Sometimes I get people coming to me who, are on the floor, of just, I am exhausted or I'm not enjoying the work that I'm doing for whatever reason and I need some help. So the reason I'm sharing all of that is to say the main objectives people are coming to me is to do with work, and some people just say, I just want a trusted partner by my side. I don't really have anyone else that I can have these kinds of open conversations with because I'm at the level that I am. That's what I want. So we're focusing mainly on those objectives, which tend to be work-related objectives, but we tend to agree, how do you want to be feeling through all of that? What do you want life to look like? What do you want your health to be like whilst you are performing in this way? So we'll bring it all in, so we look at the whole of them. One of the things I quite often do is look at someone's values with them. Most of the people I work are in their 40s, in their 50s. Most don't necessarily have a crystal clear idea of what their values are. And I still do a values piece of work probably every couple of years on myself, because you might have the same values, but they might mean different things to you. So I think really getting into, who are you? What are you about? Therefore, how do you want to show up at work and in life? What legacy do you want to be leaving? What do you want to be known for? What do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? All of those kinds of conversations, they have a health element to them, as well as having a very clear business element to them as well, because we are whole people. So really it's taking that rounded look. It's saying, so if you want to get, if you want to now be operating at the next level, you want to go from being a customer services director to a chief operating officer, for example. Yes, we can talk about how you build your skills, how you get the right experience and connections and get yourself ready for an application process, for example. But also, what's it going to mean to you in terms of pressure? How do you respond to pressure? How do you ensure you are well through that process so you can perform at your best? And so that you can still have a life outside of work, which is where you're thriving and you're enjoying it. I know I've gone on a passionate rant there.
No, it's fine.
But it's bringing all of that story together to say, you might be coming to me with one very clear business objective in mind, but I can guarantee you we will go all over the place in our pursuit of achieving that objective, and there'll be reasons for doing that.
Yeah, that's a really good idea to do it on yourself as well, and to keep yourself from or to keep yourself moving forward and making sure that you stay healthy. And that's one of my questions in a little bit, actually. But one thing that I'd like to ask you, so property management is quite male dominated. It's getting better, but certainly in senior levels, it is still quite male dominated. Are there any unique challenges that you think women face in leadership roles when it's a male dominated environment, or do you just see the same issues across the board, whether it doesn't matter on gender?
Do you know, it's a really interesting one because it's very much based on organisational culture, and obviously that can be influenced by gender bias. But the experiences I have now from a client point of view is that certainly, so I tend to, at the moment, I'm working heavily in the banking sector and also in the university sector.
Okay.
And in both of those sectors, there is more of a balance coming in, gender balance for sure. But you can have, male-dominated executive teams that create the most inclusive and like rewarding and fulfilling environment for everybody because of the values of the leaders, irrespective of their gender.
Right.
Similarly, I've got people who are working in like more equally based or potentially even female dominated environments and having the opposite experience. So I'm finding that really interesting because I grew up, professionally in a very male dominated environment as a young woman, so a woman in her 20s, typically surrounded by men in their 40s and beyond. I felt like I had to behave like a man.
Okay.
So I had to sort of adopt behaviors and influencing techniques and thinking patterns that I knew would appeal in that environment. And I do see a lot of my female clients coming to me with that to say, well, this is what I think, but in order to think something done, I'll need to do X, Y, and Z to influence a different way of thinking. So I think there's something around, just general communication, influencing styles that we've got to think about. But maybe it's the clients that I attract as well. But my experience is now, because my client base is 50, I work with as many men as I do women. I do work with people who are very inclusive, very aware, want to give everybody a voice, and are kind of aiming to increase their self-awareness and be accepting of where they might have flaws in that space. So I've gone down a little bit of a different road there to say over time, I feel as though I'm starting to see a difference. But the reality is that I still do believe we work in a male-influenced society. And for women, that does mean working harder. I'm an optimist, so I remain hopeful that things are absolutely going in the right direction, even if it's slow.
You will get there in the end.
I'm just one person seeing a number of clients a year, but my values are absolutely about inclusivity.
I've said to you before about even down to your social media and the great content that you put out. Your influence, I'm sure, doesn't just stop at the banking sector. Well, it's hit me, so and hopefully you'll be listened. This podcast will be listened to by a lot of property professionals as well. So you're doing great things. So long may that continue. But imposter syndrome, something that I have struggled with, and many of my colleagues and industry colleagues have struggled with as well. Looking around sometimes and you think, I couldn't do something like that, or even if you could, it's. Do you ever experience that, your clients, or how can you support that and change that mindset?
So yes, I experience it. I tend to think of it as self-doubt. Clients experience it. It's one of the reasons that I did write Confidence Confessions as well, because what I just find is that no matter how senior someone is, how capable they are, how competent they are, how well they present and how confident they present to others, there's usually something going on behind the scenes. So the privilege of my position is that I hear lots of stories of like, oh my God, I'm going into this thing this week. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it. Whereas everybody around them will just think they have it nailed. So I do sit here in the belief that the absolute significant majority of people have a good dose of self-doubt going on, and that can be healthy. It can help you perform, it can help you think
Hmm.
about where you want to develop. Obviously, where it becomes more destructive is when that's persistent, it's unfounded, becomes debilitating for an individual, and we might start using phrases of imposter syndrome, just everything that they approach, they are riddled with self-doubt that's not based in any evidence whatsoever.
Okay.
I think it's hard to overcome, so I don't belittle it. I've definitely experienced that, particularly when I was going through kind of my career transition. But I tend to work with clients probably on quite a practical basis because I tend to find it works of just jolting the emotional thought process, the emotional flow, if you will. I tend to ask people to kind of keep what I refer to as an evidence bank. So, how do you
Okay.
keep all of your wins, all of your achievements, compliments you've received, things that you feel really proud of? All of these positive things that happen every single day, and we don't capture them. But one comment from one person can absolutely destroy us, and we can think about it for weeks to come.
Yeah.
So when someone's in that space, just saying, right, if we're in a court of law today and you to present the case for you being, can I swear?
Yeah, because
Of
whatever you like.
you being totally shit at your job
Yeah.
versus competent at your job, what is the evidence base here? So I know that's very factual and we're using facts to fight emotion, which sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, but it can jolt your thinking to say, let's be real here, which leads me on to then doing a reality check. So
Hmm.
I quite often have we have an agreed language because it can sound a bit harsh, but like, what's the reality check here? You've
Hmm.
got a narrative going on that's saying, I'm bad at this. This person thinks I'm awful. I'm going to get fired. I won't be able to pay my mortgage. I've already kind of got myself on the street with my family as a result of one comment from one person.
Yeah.
And we sort of do, right, we're spiraling. What's the reality check here? What's the evidence for this? So just starting to get into those conversations. Now, obviously, as a coach, I have to manage my professional boundaries carefully. So sometimes when imposter syndrome is very deep, some of those more tactical practices aren't scratching the surface. It's usually a time for therapy. So I might be saying to someone, I can help you with this side of thing, but actually I think there's another professional who
Yeah.
could help you go deeper into this, because that's usually potentially looking backwards into childhood and so on. So that's where, as a coach, you've to protect the client in front of you, not step outside of your boundaries, but still help them get the answers that they're looking for in that way forward.
And it's great that you're able to recognize that as well, professionally and personally, because you don't want to overstep and cause a problem or not be able to help the person that you're trying to help.
What I also find with my clients as well, which some people would say isn't the role of a coach, but I say I'm by someone's side, I'm going to help them in whatever way I
Hmm.
can, is that I do feel I have a real knack for seeing the brilliance in people and being able to articulate what that is. So just from our sessions, I can see where their strengths lie. I can see
Yeah.
how they're making a difference, what legacy they're leaving, what lives they're touching, what results they're delivering, and playing that back to people. So when people feel seen and heard and appreciated, it makes the world a difference. And if
Yeah.
someone can get that from their line manager in an organization, from their partner and friends at home, they're going to be in a good place. Obviously,
Yeah.
we want to be drawing it from within. That's ideally, we don't want to be dependent on other people. But as a coach, as an advisor, as a partner, I see it as my role to, replay the facts as I see them.
Yeah. And
And
sometimes you need that. Sometimes
yeah.
you just need, even if you are trying to pull it from within, sometimes you just
Hmm.
can't see it. And you just need that person to put their arm around you,
Mm.
either metaphorically
Yeah,
or
yeah.
otherwise, to just be like, do you know what? You've done this, 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 and this
Hmm.
just today. but last week you did all of this,
Yeah.
or, you know, or even if it is down to the fact that, do you know what, you got out of bed, you made yourself a cup of tea, you had a shower and you cleaned your teeth. If that's all you can do that day, that's also enough.
It is important to help people with that. But also what I find is that for a lot of people, your most crucial, impactful strengths you have come so naturally to you that you don't even realize you have them.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's why some people can struggle in interview at selling themselves.
Mm.
Well, because they can't articulate what it is that they're brilliant at and how they get the results that they do.
Right.
And sometimes coaching for me is around how do we draw out what it is that you're brilliant at? How do you articulate that? How do you believe that so that you can do more with it?
Back to you and how you balance everything. I've made a little list here. So I've got coach, author, speaker, business owner. I'm sure there are 1,000 other things. Obviously, we don't want you to burn out again. How do you balance all of the things without going down that burnout? If you got techniques?
I have a variety of things, and I will say that I feel like I haven't pushed myself hard, like really hard again at times, because we don't just cure ourselves overnight of decades worth of traits of what led us to something. For me, having my own business in which I can, I don't always, but which I can, say what my working patterns are, how many clients I'm going to have, the type of work that I'm going to do. All of that is really crucial. Sometimes I let my boundaries slip and I feel it straight away. But because it's my business and I make the decisions, I can pull it back quite quickly. I'm not saying you should work all hours if you love your work, but when you're doing work that you find really, really fulfilling, it's not as energy draining or taxing or toxic as doing the same amount of hours in an environment that might not be right for you. But in terms of my own practices, coinciding with, changing career and business, I moved to the countryside. I'm a real lover of green space. I go out walking every morning, without fail, whatever the weather is. That's a real significant part of my grounding process. It helps me set myself up for the day. I have certain people around me that I lean on to help me with things. My nutrition, is good and sound, as you'd probably hope, given some of my background, but I know how to look after myself well. And I think those are my simple things, and I am really focused on what brings joy in life, and I am more bothered with simplicity than I am with complexity in my life. So I could push my business in a number of ways which would probably be very advantageous commercially, but wouldn't meet what's important to me. And sometimes it's easy to get carried away with that, to say, oh well, as a coach doing X, Y, and Z, working with these kinds of people, maybe I should be fully on the speaker circuit, or I should be doing, I should be launching big group programs, or things that other people do. But what I've discovered is that those are quite draining things for me. I draw my energy from one-to-one work. I've learned that. That's where I apply my time and energy. And I do other things in a more limited fashion, so I can protect myself in the process.
Great advice. And finally, what is next for you? Is there another book?
What is next? Definitely consolidating my business in the way that it is. I feel like I've really nailed the formula in terms of the kinds of people that I'm working with and the sort of work we're doing. I absolutely adore it. But as you know, it takes time and energy to sustain. I am always thinking of ways in which I can help a broader audience. There are a lot of people who might not be able to afford coaching, for example. And I think writing, I do enjoy writing, so I do think books are the way to do it. I do believe I've got another book in me. I have got probably 20 titles written down in a notebook somewhere. I think that will happen. I'm not just sure exactly when. And I would like to start doing audio work at some point in time.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's a podcast or just turning some of my content into an audio version to be more accessible for people. But yeah, those kinds of things. I think I know I can help people in some way, shape or form, and I'd like to be able to reach a broader audience in a way that works for me. That's the key.
Well, that all sounds amazing. Is there anything you'd like to add before I let you go?
There isn't, Jodie. It's been a brilliant conversation. It's lovely to speak to you. Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, take care.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my latest podcast. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. The links are in the show notes. Or you can contact me on jodie@jodiefraser.com. For more content and updates, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your favourite platforms. Thank you once again for listening. Until next time, take care.